There are legends of two podcasters that had such strong takes about film that they pierced through the veil of life and death. And once they got on their mics, they were no longer humans. They were specimens that touched the soul of every film bro on each side of the hemisphere. This is Sinners.
Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Sinners!
You haven't done an intro like that in a long time.
It's Sinners! We're doing Sinners!
I know, dude. This is the first, modern movie of sorts we've covered on this show.
Yes. Off your suggestion, I'll say really quickly that, I watched this movie opening weekend, watched it on IMAX, fell in love with it because it was the first movie of the year that I basically felt like oh my God, this is it. We're back. This is amazing. It's an original blockbuster movie. And then I hope you don't mind me saying, but I feel like you don't really make it to the movies that often, which is totally fine. But also it's sometimes it takes you a while to get to a recommendation from me sometimes too. I know it's not out of it's not personal, but it just happens. You take a little bit longer. And this
I love
time,
how defensive this setup is, by the way.
because I know I can feel you very quickly just being it's not, I like you. It's not that. And I'm just I'm saying it for you,
No, I'm just chilling here.
And you were the one that was hey, let's do Sinners. We've been thinking about doing a new movie for a while. Let's do Sinners. And I was like, all right, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned this too off mic before we started this, that this episode might bring in newcomers to the show. I mean, we're hoping every episode brings in newcomers, but this one, if it brings in any newcomers, we just want listeners to know this isn't normally the type of episode we do. We like to look back on older movies. But, welcome aboard. We'd love to still have you around and hear our thoughts on this one.
So, yes, welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever you listen to our podcast, know that you can also watch us on YouTube at Movies That Changed Us.
And we do have a Patreon, guys. If anyone likes the show and wants to support us, you can go to patreon.com/movies that changed us. And we're actually doing some brand new bonus content of sorts. It's going to be kind of, in a loving way, a shot in the dark. We're trying something very new, but we're going to be playing a game right after we finish this episode for probably about, hopefully, 20, 30 minutes or so that I created for Altaf.
What's the name of the bonus show? You got to say it.
Oh, yeah, I know. Altaf's so psyched about the name of the show. It's called Movies That Played Us.
Yay!
Where we play basically movie-based games. You've seen those little quizzes on YouTube where it'll be guess the title of the movie or guess the poster or random little trinkets. Altaf and I are going to custom make games for each other to kind of mess around. So Altaf doesn't know what the game is going to be. I made it for him, so I'm going to tell him so you guys can know too, so you can get nice and excited for it if you want to check out the Patreon. Altaf, the game I'm going to show you is Guess the Beard from a movie.
Hell yeah. Okay, cool.
It's not going to be just beards. It'll be other types of facial hair too. So just know, but mostly beards is going to be the general gist of it.
So if you're new, each episode we ask each other what art moved us this week. So Chris, what art moved you this week?
Well, I was out of town briefly the other day and I went to a screening of The Room, which for longtime listeners might know I'm a big fan of The Room. It's a classic Tommy Wiseau, Greg Sestero, and I went to it with my cousin, and it was his first time going to a screening. And for those who aren't familiar, the uninitiated, for The Room fans, the screenings have a lot of traditions and gags, kind of like Rocky Horror Picture Show, if you have any idea what I'm talking about, where basically people yell things at the screen, people bring spoons, and if you don't know what The Room is, you have no fucking clue what I'm talking about, but just rest assured.
I feel like most people know what The Room is.
Yeah, I hope so.
It is one of the most popular movies now. I just, because now there's a Seth Rogen movie coming out, I feel like anyone who's listening to this podcast knows what it is.
I hope so, yeah. So with that being said, I've been a fan of The Room since high school, and it was really fun to go to this one, though, because there was, a pocket of people in the audience. I think I told you about this, Altaf, that, clearly were from LA and knew all the bits that you had to do at the screenings.
Yes, because the LA screenings are probably the most famous ones, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other cool thing about going to that screening, though, was that Greg Sestero was there, who was one of the lead actors in The Room, and he also wrote the book, The Disaster Artist, and he was literally right there in the front when I went into the theater. He was there just selling merch just by himself behind the little table. And it was really cool because he was just making small talk with all the fans and there was a good sized line too. So it was nice.
Before we move on, I want to say, I don't know if you're comfortable with me saying it. Again, we could just cut this out if you're not. The person who, you went to go see it with, you said it was your cousin. He is also the person that does the intro music and outro music for the show.
Yeah, yeah. For listeners especially, I mean, well, I was gonna say actually, you do know the outro music, YouTube watchers, if you got to the end of the episodes. But our little jingle, yeah, that's my cousin. And he's also designed like old school nice dude thumbnails too. Like on the reaction channel, if you go back to like the very first videos, he's done the thumbnails for those too.
Yeah, and the outro music that's in our show right now is also the same outro music we've used for movie reactions.
Yeah.
So he's been a part of like he's like a third nice dude in a way.
He's the unsung third nice dude. Yeah, that's my story. Altaf, what art moved you this week?
The one that I think I want to mention, just because I've been watching it a lot these past couple of weeks, is 30 Rock. There's not an episode where I'm like, this episode moved me, but it's just one of the funniest shows. I'm blazing through it. I remember season 1 was like so stop and go. I would start it and then come back to it months and later. But it's like any show. Once you get in that groove, then you're just going. And 30 Rock is like popcorn to me. You can watch one episode after another. It's so easy to get down. It is one of the funniest written shows I've ever watched.
It's
jam-packed with jokes.
I need to watch more of it, man, because every time I've seen an episode of 30 Rock, I'm like, holy crap, this is a really well-written comedy show. And I know it's not really saying much, but, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I just haven't made the time to really watch it. I've seen like just a good handful of episodes.
So usually when we transition into the main conversation, which is going to be about Sinners, I would ask you if it was any other movie, how Sinners changed you. You literally just saw it, and it's a new movie, so it's kind of like a little too early for that. So you've been holding on to your thoughts. I've been telling you for a month to go watch this movie. You finally saw it, and when you saw it, you texted me. You're like, I'm saving my thoughts for the podcast. So I need to ask you, what did you think of Sinners?
I thought it was fucking awesome, dude. I'm not going to jump immediately into spoilers yet, just in case listeners haven't seen it. No,
let's say this. We'll have like a 5 to 10 minute spoiler-free discussion, and then we will give a warning, and we will let you know when we're going to be transitioning before we go into full spoilers.
So spoiler-free thoughts, though. Yeah, like I said, I thought it was amazing. Beautiful looking movie. Like, it's such a unique... it has such a unique atmosphere, and Ryan Coogler he's so good with his settings. Like all of his movies, he is so attached to the place it's set in. Like every single one, they make it, and it's a cliche thing where they say like, they made Philadelphia a character, they made Wakanda a character, but they very much did it again in this one too. I just found myself so swept away by the world that it was set in. And before any of the vampire-y stuff kicks in, again, that's not spoiling anything because we all know it, I was already hooked on it as just a normal functioning drama.
I remember Red Letter Media pointed out how Jay thought that he loved the movie despite it being a vampire movie. Like, he honestly loved the movie when it wasn't a vampire movie, which he said that he still loved it all overall. But it's a strong sentiment to what this movie's able to do, which is like, it is able to do both very well, in my opinion. And if we want to get to my thoughts now, I think it's the best movie that's come out this year. It's honestly one of the best movies that's come out in this genre, like in the horror genre or whatever you want to call it, in the past 5 years. It's very exciting. Ryan Coogler is one of my favorite filmmakers. We'll talk about it more, but Creed is kind of the reason I'm here. Like, it's the reason I wanted to pursue filmmaking, or at least I realized that I could like do it. I was already making short films with friends, but when I saw Creed in theaters with my dad, I was like, I think I can do that, which is an insane ego thing to say.
It inspired you. I feel like some movies do that, especially I feel like a lot of boys have that under their belts where they have like the movie that made them feel like, oh, I'm going to go fuck shit up and make a movie. I feel like I had that with Pulp Fiction, and a lot of people have had that with Pulp Fiction, but I feel that sometimes with Clerks too. But Creed, I think, is a perfectly valid one for you.
Yeah, and the movie felt very handmade. Like, Creed felt very handmade. It just felt like, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that Ryan Coogler's always able to do this, which is, you made a great point about he's able to make that location feel understood and realized. but he's able to take big blockbuster genres with Creed, the Black Panther movies, and Sinners, and he's able to make them so personal while still knowing that, hey, I still want to make this a fun Black Panther movie, or hey, I still want to make a really fun vampire movie. And
Yeah.
Fruitvale's the one that's like indie. It's in its own place. It is, some people argue, just some people say that it's his best movie, and you can't really make an argument against that. But I think Sinners is like the full realization of what he's able to do, which is, hey, I want to be like the Steven Spielberg. I want to make full on blockbuster movies that are for everyone. But I also have a lot of shit to say. So like, I want to be able to say those things while not like making anyone feel like an outsider when they're watching the movie. Like, everyone should be able to enjoy it, but I also have things that I want to say. And I mean, come on, man. Isn't that why we do this podcast? Like, isn't that why like we watch or consume art? For that reason of like being entertained, being able to escape, but also like getting some insight into someone's perspective. I mean, it's the reason I love him. And it's so cool because this is actually his first original movie. Fruitvale was based on a true story. Black Panther's Black Panther, and Creed is like this franchise, right? And this is his first fully realized original movie. And he's working with his De Niro, like the guy that, like, with the way Martin Scorsese was Robert De Niro. Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler are just like this pair that are a match made in heaven.
Yeah, dude. You know, like going off of what you said about him having something to say, I feel like the vampire stuff is like integral. It's like he uses vampires so smartly. It's not like just a, like you said, where it's just a generic drama that has a lot to say, and then also vampires come in and kind of derail it. It actually, like, the vampires are so important to what Ryan Coogler wants to say, and kind of it almost like gave me like real emotions, like almost brought me to tears thinking about, what this movie would mean to someone like Ryan Coogler too. Just because I think what art can do, kind of like what you're saying, is like it can shed a light on an experience, right? And sometimes conveying that experience in a unique or abstract or supernatural way can convey the emotions in a way that people like you and me, who are not African American or who don't have a relationship to the culture or the history or the music or any of those things, but it can still help us understand it and sympathize with it in a unique way. And I'm not saying vampires was the only way we could possibly do it, but I'm just saying that's what good, well-made, beautiful art can do, is it sheds a light into someone's mind and how they're feeling.
Very well put. And we'll have this as a surface level discussion and then go deeper into this, because there's a sequence I really want to talk to you about that is like,
I know exactly what sequence it is.
the standout fucking sequence in this movie. Like, it is a sequence that's also been kind of polarizing. Like, initially, like when the movie came out, some people were kind of like, what the hell's that doing there? This movie has a lot to say about the role black music has played, not only in America, but also in cultural preservation. It's also like, it's very blues music centric, right? The whole movie surrounds blues music, which is, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie yet, and have only seen it, of course, go see it. But also, like, you might be surprised hearing that. Or maybe it's been a month and you've already heard a lot of that kind of stuff. But, like, it was definitely a surprise to me. I don't know about you, Chris, but, like, when I went into the movie, I saw it opening weekend and I was like, oh, this is, like, a lot about blues music. Like, this is not just, like, it's not a flavor that he's adding. It's not just a part of the soundtrack. That's, like, the driving force of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of a little more prepared for it than you were, because we had a brief discussion about it. Because the difference is, you went and saw it just out of your own enjoyment, and then later on I suggested, oh, we should do a podcast on Sinners, and I hadn't even seen it yet, but I had the idea just because I was like, I thought I was going to like it because everyone seems to be loving it and you were fully pushing it to me. And so you were concerned about whether or not we'd have something to really say or talk about, just because this is a newer movie and it's like a little fresh and it's kind of harder to have an off the cuff discussion without any prior prep work and thinking. And so I ended up asking you, though, I was like, okay, well, without spoiling anything, is there something, like a deeper in this movie than just, action and vampires and shit? And you're like, oh yeah, definitely. And you said, like, without giving anything away, because I want you to go in as blind as you can, I think it's about the historical and cultural preservation of music. And that's kind of what you left it at. So I went in kind of more ready for it than you were, but
yeah.
it still had like a lot of interesting, like kind of folklore-y, supernatural elements, and it kind of tied music in with it, which was what was fascinating with it. And again, sorry if that was a little spoilery, but should we transition?
Go watch Sinners if you haven't. We're going to be transitioning into a spoiler-filled discussion, and I mean spoiler-filled. So again, if you haven't seen Sinners, stop right here and then come back. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is Preacher Boy.
Yeah, okay.
Should we start with Preacher Boy or should we start with Smoke and Stack?
Both are equally interesting in my eyes. So since we already, said Preacher Boy, let's just go for it.
Okay, so Preacher Boy is the main character in this movie, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is the protagonist, he's the driving force, he's also the audience's eyes and ears, because Michael B. Jordan as twins, Smoke and Stack, they are the people coming into the story, and Preacher Boy's kind of being like, you guys were in Chicago, I thought, what's happening? And he's learning through them what Jim Crow America is like. It's like, even in Chicago, we're not as free as you think we are. Preacher Boy has aspirations. He's a musician. This guitar that he has is his kind of like ticket, he feels like, to get out of here and make something of himself. Through Smoke and Stack, he gets invited to the juke joint to play music there. And there is there's a sequence like, I just haven't seen something like this in a movie before, where basically Delroy Lindo's character, Delta Slim, who's also playing music there, who is also just fucking phenomenal in this movie.
Oh, he's so cool.
He's just like, he's the most fun character you can watch. He's just fun to watch. But like, and we'll talk about him, but he gets put up on stage to play music. And suddenly, as he starts playing, you hear the quote that was said early in the movie when, they're setting up the preamble before the Sinner's title is revealed, of kind of what I said in my synopsis, of just like, there are legends that there's those who can play music that can pierce through the veil of life and death. And he starts playing, and as that voiceover starts, you suddenly fucking get a guy playing electric guitar.
Yeah.
And then you get this insane wonder where a DJ comes in, and then time, music, cultures all kind of interject, but specifically it's about like how all these types of music, specifically black music, they're all speaking to each other. Like, they all are started at this one specific place and they're all talking to each other. And it ends, and I'm just explaining the sequence. I want you to talk about it. I'm just explaining the sequence really quickly. And then it goes outside of the barn. He starts literally playing a barn burner, where it just burns the entire barn down. They're dancing. And then it shows the vampires, these Irish vampires that are watching this all. And that is what draws them to this place, is these Irish vampires want that music. Chris, when you watch this, this was a sequence I was like, I want you to watch Sinners because of this sequence. What were your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it pretty much the same as yours, man. Like, it was one of those moments where as soon as the electric guitar came in, I was like, oh, like, okay. Like, and I think a lot of people probably felt this, where I'm like, is the whole movie going to be like this? Or is this just a one-time sequence? Like, immediately my mind started going of like, where is the, like, I had an idea of where I thought it was going to go. And then it just suddenly had this happen. But it's still like, I felt the underlying kind of tragic nature of it, if that makes any sense as well, because you're watching this incredible sequence of people celebrating this small, tight-knit community that are dancing and having a great time, but it uses the barn as a clear metaphor of like their safe space,
Yeah.
in a world that, is obviously heavily segregated and doesn't accept them. Which is interesting because there's also like a Chinese couple that's there too. It's not just black people. It's like, all sorts of races, people who just aren't accepted by the greater society of white people, basically.
Well, it's pointed that the vampires are also Irish. The Irish
exactly
were heavily discriminated, and they suffered through their own form of racism. The real villains at the end of the day is the Klan that shows up at the end. But like,
yeah.
It is interesting that even the vampires are just like, listen, we have our own music. We're doing the same thing as you. We felt freer than we ever have playing this music. And you think you're free right now. You really aren't. but if you come with us, you can play your music forever.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like, yeah, like on paper it could just be like, the classic, like just a group of evil white vampires, could have taken him, right? But using the vampirism, whatever you want to call it, as like a metaphor for assimilating, in a way
Yeah.
to the greater, yeah, like I said, the greater society or greater culture, and kind of letting it be bastardized and watered down and turned into something else without actually like the fact that the vampires wanted to absorb their culture, right? Their memories. They said like, "Hey, we're after you because we want your memories, and your artistic, exploits." It's very clearly like a metaphor for the fact that they haven't experienced what they've experienced to create the art that they've created, you know. And
Yeah.
it's sad. And so like before I knew vampire stuff was coming. So when I was seeing this party going that hard, I did feel like it was really mind blowing and really stimulating and really cool. And it was like nothing I've ever seen, like you said. But I did feel like an undertone of sadness there too. Knowing that like where it actually does end up going historically, that like, yeah, no, capitalism, to just kind of bastardize hip hop music, what it turned into now.
Yeah, it's Delroy Lindo's character, Delta Slim. He says it in the car when Stack, him, and Preacher Boy are in the car. He was like, they liked our music, but they just didn't like who was playing it. That's not the exact quote, but it's like, yeah, I mean, that's how it goes every time with every call, like every.
Well, then he told like a fucked up story about a guy who got lynched.
Oh,
Too.
and then like the sound design, like as they're in the car, you can slightly hear the lynching happen.
Yeah.
Very upsetting.
Yeah, well, and doesn't he get, remind me, I want to say he gets emotional when he tells the story. I remember he starts like getting teary eyed, but doesn't he start singing, or does he start playing afterwards too?
He immediately starts like banging his hand against the car door and humming. And then Stack turns around and is like, "You got that guitar, don't you?"
Well, that's when like it's such a brilliant demonstration of what blues music was originally intended to be. It was an expression of that.
Well,
experience.
I gotta ask you. I have to ask. Like, are you someone that's familiar with blues music at all? Because I am not. Like, that is the one thing I came out of this movie with, which is like, I need to listen to blues music.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with blues music, but I have tremendous respect for it. It's one of those like I totally, I love it when I hear it. I've heard it live before at a club and stuff, and I really do enjoy it. But I just haven't put on. I don't know blues artists. I don't put on blues music. I do know, and I'm sure you've heard of him. Do you know Robert Johnson?
Yeah.
He's one, like, and do you know where I'm going with like the implications around this movie and stuff too? Because he has a legend around him that he made a deal with the devil, which is like every talented artist has like some sort of story like that. Like Bob Dylan has a story like that too.
But then like Sinners kind of actualizes it in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what's fascinating.
Man, there's so many things we could talk about with this movie. I really want to talk about the Irish folk dance.
Yeah.
That's a fucking party. Like when they start like singing and like you see Michael B. Jordan and Hailee Steinfeld, both now vampires, just fucking clapping. Like you almost are like, yeah, I'd fucking join them. And that's what's so interesting. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about Smoke and Stack. Let's talk about specifically Michael B. Jordan. And then we'll get around to more of the thematic stuff. But Smoke and Stack are twins that are coming from Chicago. They're criminal twins, basically. I could have put that a better way, but everyone in the town knows them. Oh, you're the Smokestack twins, they worked for Al Capone, and everyone's saying, oh, you're in Chicago, it must be better, no Jim Crow up there. Preacher Boy says to them, and it's just like, don't let them lie to you. It's just like you're not any freer than you are here. The critical line being, so we thought we'd come back to the evil we know. How, like, what did you think of, because this is the thing you and I were discussing when this movie was coming out, and come out yet. We're like, I don't know, it's twins, that rarely works. How do you feel? How do you feel now watching the movie? Did that work for you?
Yeah, fucking brilliant, dude. Probably my favorite depiction of twins. I mean, like usually the other comparison that you and I have made personally is like also between the Winklevi and the Social Network.
I still watch that movie and forget that it's not Army Hammer's not two guys.
Exactly. But I felt the exact same way with this one. Like that's a challenging role for Michael B. Jordan, because at least Armie Hammer was like a relatively side character and he had like a handful of scenes, but this is like one of the leads, and you had to distinguish these two personalities from one another, and they felt like different people. I don't know how else to say it other than that, but they did, even aside from the show-offy shots, because I know they did those shots where they pass each other the cigarette, and that was fucking cool looking when they're both, you see the puff of smoke in the same image. It was so brilliantly
and
done.
that's
when
their
they hugged.
introduction too. Like Ryan Coogler's kind of flexing there. He's like, no, this is
Exactly. But aside from the flexing of the technical prowess of it, the acting was so strong. It was so seamless. Like the same deal. I forgot they were not twins. Oh, and also shouty to another movie twin is Parent Trap. That's the other one that I forget to bring up.
No, dude, great pull. Parent Trap's like an amazing movie.
I haven't seen Parent Trap in a long time. But
there's a great video
I
essay out there that's talking about how good Parent Trap looks visually.
Okay.
I'm going to link it in this episode. I'll send you a link and you can put it in the description, because people should.
It was about the lighting, right? It was about why movies look bad today, and they use Parent Trap. And yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, definitely, listeners, I recommend watching that one too. I'm with you on that, Altaf.
So something Ryan Coogler said about twins. He said that the reason he wanted to talk about twins and do twins in this movie is that growing up, his biggest fear were twins. Something that he wanted to explore with this movie is that twins, when they're together, they're so similar. But when they're separate, their differences are highlighted. And early on in the movie, you see them together. They're sharing the cigarette. And when they talk to, later on, we learn it's the Klan member that sells them the juke joint. They're in sync about like, yeah, we got grown-up guns. And you know what I mean? And they're in sync immediately, right? You're like, oh, this is the dynamic. They complete each other's sentences. And then when Preacher Boy comes and they separate, immediately you're like, Stack's the wild one. He's teaching Preacher Boy how to eat pussy. And then like, and Smoke is a serious one. He suffered through this great loss. And
he's the business savvy one.
It does a great job of spending the first hour actually separating them. And then when we get to the juke joint, they're together again. So now, and this is just great screenwriting shit, where now you understand them completely. They do such a good job with that. I think this might be my favorite Michael B. Jordan performance.
You know, I can see that. That might be mine too. I'll have to think about that one a little bit. You know, I haven't, but he had my attention the entire time.
I want to say, like, Creed is, like, one of my favorite movies. Like, Fruitvale Station, he gives a performance of a lifetime in that. But there's something about this movie where I'm like, no one else could have done this as well as he did in this movie. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, Smoke and Stack, you know, it's a far more challenging role to take on than Creed. And that's not saying anything bad about Creed. Creed's a fantastic movie, like you said, but I'm just saying, like, it's just clearly, like, if you had to ask an actor, which would you rather do?
Well,
I'm sure.
Technically, it's obviously a harder role to play, right? Like, just technically having to do the physical labor of that must be insane. That's what I kept thinking about. But I really like big movie star performances. And aside from, like, when it cuts to Smoke and he's talking to, her character's name is Annie, played by Wunmi Mosaku. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. She's also fucking amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
Someone who I've never seen in anything, but I want to see in everything. Michael B. Jordan gets to do both. He gets to be Smoke, who is this, like, very grieving, like, where he's the responsible one out of the two. He's obviously the businessman guy. And then he also gets to do the fun guy. He gets to do the Han Solo, the Stack. You know what I mean?
Like maximize what Michael B. Jordan's capable of, which I think is an advantage of someone like Ryan Coogler helming this movie, because he's worked with him so many times. So he's like, okay, I'm going to write this for Michael B. Jordan. I'm going to use the shit out of Michael B. Jordan. I know exactly what he's good at, how he can look at the camera, what sides of him to show too. Like you said, he's able to play a really serious, cold, you know, responsible, kind dude. And then also he can play like the more outgoing, rebellious side.
Yeah, and like he's able to do both Killmonger and Adonis Creed in this movie. I'm not trying to be reductive. I mean, they're obviously different performances, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100%. You know, he's able to bring out both sides of him.
I want to talk a little bit about the pacing of this movie, because it's very unique, I feel like. And it's also unexpected. Like the vampire, like the first vampire isn't officially introduced until probably like 30, 40 minutes in.
I thought it was like closer to, well, maybe the vampire stuff really hits the fan like an hour in or so.
So I'm talking about, and maybe you're talking about the same thing. I'm talking
That
about
house
when,
scene.
yes, when Jack O'Connell, who's amazing in this movie, like really want to shout him out. He is like so fucking good. But Jack O'Connell, who plays the, lead Irish vampire, he literally jumps into frame.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that? Because I know the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh, okay, we're spending a lot of time with these people before we even get a hint of vampires.
Yeah, I was fully on board with it. Like, I almost forgot about the vampire stuff, which I think is probably the intention, and it does an excellent job of just getting you hooked on the characters in the world. And it was confident enough to do that. I mean, the only other movie I've seen really do that well, and this is a similar but also completely different movie in a lot of ways, is From Dusk Till Dawn. That's a movie that obviously is famous for abruptly having vampires like halfway through the movie. But the first half is still really solid. You still are really invested in what's going on, and you like the characters and stuff. And
Except
so
this movie does like I feel like Dusk Till Dawn is definitely still entertaining in the first half, but I feel like this movie's better at getting you deeply connected with the characters in the first half.
For sure, Sinners is a superior movie in in virtually every way. I love From Dusk Till Dawn, but the Sinners is clearly a better movie.
They're different. They're different. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I was fully on board with what was going on. I didn't know how hard they were going to go in the vampire stuff. I didn't know if it was going to be more of like, ominous, sneaky vampire stuff, or if it was going to be balls to the wall, like the way it ended up going, towards the end.
The moment that made it clear, that made me so happy, was that house scene, like you said, when the Native Americans come in, which I wish they used the Native Americans a bit more. I really like that part. It suddenly felt like a Western when, and it was cool that they were, like, Native Americans were actually being portrayed as, like, smart people that were, like, ahead of this.
yeah, I know, right? You kind of want a spin-off of the Native Americans that just go and hunt vampires, because you're like, wait, there were straight up vampire hunters, and like they didn't help them.
After the Native Americans leave, we cut back to the house, and the wife finds the husband's been bitten, and she screams. And then it crossfades to Jack O'Connell, and then it does another crossfade to the big moon. And it made me so happy because it was like Ryan Coogler saying, is like, yeah, I got a lot of shit to say. I also want to make a fucking badass vampire movie. I want to make such a fun vampire movie.
And the music goes so hard at times too, because it'll be like super old timey and classic, and then out of nowhere it'll hit this synth like Phantom of the Opera style.
So, okay, you mentioned music. Let's talk a little bit about this. The soundtrack obviously is wonderful. I've listened to the soundtrack ever since I watched the movie. I have it on Spotify. But the score by Ludwig Göransson, who is, I think, officially been crowned now as like one of our best. He is, just for people who are not familiar, to list off his credentials. He did Black Panther. He just did that score. He also did, he worked on both Oppenheimer and Tenet. He's also worked on the Mandalorian theme and the music in Mandalorian. And he did Creed as well. I think he did Fruitvale Station. I don't know, man. He did it again. It's just this music can't work. Sinners can't work, obviously, not just with blue music, but it also can't work without that score. Like you were saying, when it's like a character drama, it has that like twangy acoustic guitar feel that made me feel things the second time, especially,
Yeah, and then it was really different because it had such a range of sounds, of how, like, once you think you have an idea of what the music is, and then it just will make and especially this movie, it's borderline a musical, of how many song sequences there are.
100%. Yeah,
So
I would easily categorize it as musical. I also think this movie is a weird, but I think kind of a valid double feature with Blues Brothers.
Like, yeah, I could see it. Yeah.
Couldn't you see the new Beverly, like Tarantino doing something very quirky, like, oh, I'm gonna put Blues Brothers in Sinners or whatever?
Oh, dude, that would sell out so fast.
It'd be the best night ever. Like, it would be so much fun.
It would. Like, there's nothing else. Nothing else to do. I achieved.
What would you do first? Would you watch Sinners first, or would you want Blues Brothers first?
Probably Blues Brothers first.
I'm the same way.
Because Sinners is about vampires, and I feel like the only way you can do vampires is if it's like the nighttime, the after show thing. I would never want to watch a vampire movie and then watch a bright, crazy Blues Brothers movie.
Living in LA, it's really cool that we get these like repertory screenings. I would love for like an annual midnight Sinner screening. That would be amazing.
Oh, yeah, that would be sick.
Before we get ahead on that, let's keep talking a little bit about different aspects of this movie. You want to talk a little bit about the Smoke's wife, Annie, who is also practices a lot of like, voodoo magic, a lot of like, she believes in a lot of that stuff. There's this tragedy that their baby died. And, Smoke and her early on in the movie have this altercation that's just like, it didn't work on him. You know what I mean? Yeah. And she is kind of the character you want in these genre movies, which is like, I know what's going on. And now you guys didn't believe me before. Now you guys need me. And I have to say, the moment where she throws the garlic and she has that music cue moment where it's like, those aren't hate. They're vampires. I saw it opening night. My theater just broke into applause, erupted. It was.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because it was a scene that you don't get in these movies, because a lot of these movies try to be cool and not say it. And when she first started being like, "It's a hate," I was like, oh, so that's their kind of terminology. They're not going to say vampire. They're going to say it's a hate. And then she says it. She throws the garlic and says it. It was like this kind of release with the audience. And it was like what I'm talking about is like, Ryan Coogler wants to make a vampire movie too.
Yeah, well, I know that's interesting because my theater was not as packed. Funny enough,
you saw it 3 weeks into its run, So
so it wasn't like super filled, and it was a smaller theater. It was one of those like kind of luxury theaters that had like the reclining seats, so it wasn't as many people, and the seats were more expensive. But with that being said, I still felt that same thing though. Like, oh, they're not going to say vampires. They're going to call it their own thing because a lot of movies do that. Zombie movies do that shit too. Walkers and whatever, right? As long as they're not stupid names. This is just a side note. I'm okay with replacing zombies with nicknames, but when they're stupid is when I don't like it. Like I remember the game Days Gone, which I thought was a decent game. They call them freakers.
That's bad.
That's a pretty dumb name, right? Like, just call them fucking zombies now. But anyway, though, yeah, I did feel that same thing, though, when they said vampires. I'm like, oh, they're just going for it. They're calling them vampires. Cool.
She's also someone that is, when she shows up and you realize Smoke and her had this relationship, it just feels like, yeah, they've known each other for years. Like, the way they're written and their chemistry works so well,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think she had this very like they felt like a real relationship, the way they looked out for each other and the way they like kind of relied on each other for their opinions and stuff too.
And it felt like a proper person for Smoke to be with, the same way Hailee Steinfeld as Mary felt like a proper person for Stack to be with. Hailee Steinfeld is just like, I was like, God damn, she's fucking gorgeous in this movie. Like I was like, I'm trying.
Well, this movie is this is one of the horniest movies I've seen in a while in terms to come out in recent years.
That's what I was going to transition.
I figured it's a good transition.
Yeah, it is. It's a sexy movie. And so I was listening to Ryan Coogler on Mark Maron's podcast, and Mark Maron just straight up asked him, he's like, there's a lot of pussy talk in this movie.
I mean, there is, man.
And Ryan Coogler just died laughing. And he was like, he said two things. One, he said that I wanted to explore with this movie what makes vampires sexy, because that is always a through line since like the first Dracula movie. In lore, vampires are horny creatures. They're sucking your blood. Come on. And he said that he wanted to explore that, is like what makes them lust, like what makes them really want that. And then when it comes to all the, talk about going down on a woman and just like they're talking about it, they're doing it, like what's all that about? Ryan Coogler says, like, I don't know, man. Like when I was younger and I'd be around my uncles, they'd be talking about that stuff with me. Someone like Stack coming from Chicago, having this kind of air about him, is like, I know the world and this is the young guy. I'm going to treat him as my prodigy. They're going to talk about that. Is like it's about like teaching them a little bit about the world. And then there's also, if you really want to, I'm grabbing for straws here, so forgive me if you don't agree with this. This movie explores the idea of freedom in many different ways. And this is an Altaf take. I'm not saying Ryan Coogler said this. This is just me. This movie explores freedom in many ways of how to actually achieve freedom, because it's made clear very quickly that the idea of Chicago not having Jim Crow doesn't mean that they're suddenly free. They're still like financially low on the totem pole. They're still, black people are still working on plantations because that's the jobs that they can get. And they can access freedom through music. They can access, or they think they can access freedom through music. They think they can access freedom by opening their own juke joint where it's just for them. And it's also about just like going down on a woman and that woman feeling like great. And like we have the stuff, what's the stuff that we have control over? And what's the stuff that we can give each other pleasure with? And what makes us feel free? And I like, again, that might be a heavy reach, but that is something that is like, I'm sure he was thinking about.
I don't think that's a reach at all. I very much agree with that. I think like a lot of it is, in this contained barn where everyone's, like you said, feeling free and having that community and having a drink and
party. By the way, I want to go to that party.
I know, dude. I know. But like, like having, through drinking and through playing music and expressing yourself, that like, because, cunnilingus is considered at least, especially for the time, it's like a taboo thing. It's like there are still to this day cultures that look down on doing that for your woman.
I mean, my boy DJ Khaled just won't do it.
Yeah, literally, I know, it's fucking bizarre. but I even know people personally that look at that as like, oh, that's gay. Like, I'm not joking. They say shit like that. And it's weird to me. But so a point is, though, reeling back to the movie, that like, I think it's meant to be, like finding your sexual freedom and where you can have control of your own pleasure and enjoyment of life in other ways when the world is looking to fuck you over,
When I went to see this movie in theaters, there were three big applauses that I noticed. First one, this was not in order. I'm just saying it, but like first one I remember is when she says they're vampires. The other one I remember is, we'll talk about the scene, but that final confrontation when you think the Jack O'Connell character is about to kill Preacher Boy and Michael B. Jordan shows up from behind. People just lost their shit because it is a hero moment, right?
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant.
And the third time was when Preacher Boy's going down on Perlene, and then it cuts to Stack outside being like, he found that button, didn't he?
Oh, that's awesome. I wish I got to see that one in theaters because it was still really fun. I still love the movie. But
you saw it in theaters,
I wish
but you
I got
just didn't
that.
see it with a full audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? Again, this movie like is huge, and it might become one of those things where in LA they do another screening of it or whatever. You might still get a chance. Yeah, I mean, there's all these like the thing I love about this movie is that it's a big ensemble piece as well.
Yeah, the town is just as well thought out, and all the people who live in it are just as vital and fleshed and important.
It's not only hard to write ensemble pieces, but when you have sequences in the barn, the person that I was thinking most about, maybe this is biased as an editor, is I was thinking about the editor. I was like, to edit sequences like this and make it feel like momentum, you're cutting back and forth between all these groups of characters, Cornbread and Delta outside. You're cutting to Stack and Mary talking. You're cutting to Smoke and his wife talking. You're cutting to Preacher Boy and Perlene, and then you have these vampires. Like, how does that fucking work,
I know. It's so crazy. It's so well done. I think of the bias thing, because I think of that from a screenwriting perspective too. I'm like, how do you, like, when I used to write scripts a lot, I would get anxiety writing more than two characters in a scene.
You know what the hardest scene to write is? The hardest scene to write is a dinner table scene.
Exactly. It's like, if anyone who's ever taken a stab at screenwriting who had to write a scene between more than two people, especially at a dinner table where everyone has to talk to each other, you don't realize how difficult and overwhelming it is when you realize like, oh, everyone has to have like a moment or say something. Oh, this person's, hasn't said anything in a while. And so, yeah, writing a full blown fucking party with characters that are all equally interesting, like all the side characters, like you said, Cornbread. You know, like I loved Cornbread. I felt bad for him. I was like, poor guy, just went out to take a piss.
Played by Omar Miller.
Yeah, wait, what was he from? Because I forgot to look him up because I remember I recognized him.
I recognized him too. Let's see, Omar Miller.
We're gonna get to the bottom of this.
He was in 8 Mile. He
is an 8 Mile. Okay.
Yeah. He was also in hit show Ballers. I mean, that show
How
went
long
on
did
for
Ballers go for?
2015 to 2019, it says.
Wow. Okay, that's actually a decent run.
Yeah. Yeah. But okay, so yeah, there's all these like characters that you get to know before we get to the barn, which is what I love about it. It's like once we get there, we know these people well enough that the movie can get going now.
Yeah.
Before we start talking about like the heavy genre stuff again, which I'm excited to talk about, I want to also just mention some other characters really quickly. I loved Delroy Lindo as Delta Slim.
Yeah.
They meet him as he's like outside by the train station playing music, trying to make money. And
he's drunk, right?
I mean, yeah, he is a drunk.
Yeah, he's drunk the whole movie.
And he basically is like, listen, I don't know how much time I got left in my life, but I'm going to be here until I do. I get enough money to pay for liquor and that's it. And I'm fine. And then Stack very brilliantly is like, oh, I'll drink to that. Takes out Irish beer. And, but anyways, he's just a fun character because there's obviously a lot of pain in him that we learn in the car. But then after that, it's like the movie needed to deal with that. We're like, okay, this guy's not just a funny drunk. He has a lot of depth. But once we get to the barn, he gets the funniest lines.
He becomes the kooky old man of the group.
The hardest laugh I had with him was when Preacher Boy's asking, I was just like, hey, where's Stack? He's like, oh, he's in there. And you see like Mary's writing Stack. And then he closes the door. And Delta's like, oh, he's busy, huh?
Yeah, well, because he's I know. Well, and also how they got pissed that like Cornbread made it like let him watch the door. He's like, you trusted him to watch the door. I did just want to say also another element to the movie, and this is really present in the first half, which is why I'm bringing it up now, is how much of the use of like money talk is involved.
Thank you.
Every tiny little exchange the characters have, it's always like, hey, what kind of currency are you using and how much does this cost? It's like very realistic. You know, it's not like oh, I'll just buy that and flip a coin. You know what I mean? They actually like Ryan Coogler actually thought through of what these characters' relationship with money is, because that's very important to this community, you know, because it's a very, ostracized and segregated community. So money is going to be a thing throughout this whole town, you know. So I just wanted to say I loved how they had that element, and the fact that the character of Smoke is extra money conscious. That's his whole thing. He has an argument with Stack about whether or not to accept regular money or the money that they're paid with. Did they have like wooden coins or something?
Yeah, and Stack's whole argument is just like, listen, you got to like let them be comfortable here. They've been working all day, and you got to let them like, this is not Chicago, you know?
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of my favorite scenes, especially the second time watching the movie, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he's telling that girl to watch over his car and be like, I can give you 15 cents. I think that was the number. And she's like, okay, perfect. Yeah. He's like, no. You got to learn to negotiate. Now money talks to each other. So for you, 15 cents is just not going to be good enough. And she's like, 50? He's like, 25. That's the best I can do. He teaches her about negotiation, but it's a fun scene. It tells you a little bit about Smoke, who he is, his relationship with money, but it also shows like kind of at this time in Jim Crow America, this community's like relationship with money, the black community's relationship with money is like they're taking what they can get. They have, they're already like not privileged. So they're just like, okay, I'll take the money. And Smoke and Stacker come from Chicago. They are like, they've made something of themselves, and now they're coming back and they're like, no, we deserve more. And Smoke is coming in and be like, negotiate with me, you know? And the underlying, the subtext behind that, for me at least, was like, no, you deserve more. Don't just accept the first offer, you know?
Yeah, and it feels like a city or town that needs something like that party. Like they need like that outlet, that release while they've been struggling in the regular world. It like justifies and makes you feel like this barn is worth fighting for.
That's why it's so like it's one of the saddest moments is when after Stack has turned into a vampire and he's telling his brother, he's like, we were never free. You knew that. And then Jack O'Connell's character is just like, those people that they were clan and they're going to come kill you after this. This is actually a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
So Mary goes outside because she learns from Stack that they're low on money and they need money. So Mary's like, let me talk to them, see what I can do. She goes out there, and a jaw-dropping moment in theaters is when she realizes they're like sharp fangs and their drool. She's like, get out of here. She starts walking back, and fucking Jack O'Connell starts floating in the air.
Yeah, dude, that scene is fucking wild. Yeah, no, that visual was so cool. How it just perfectly cut out right as he just launches, and they never really did it again after that. Like eventually, now then the vampires are just running and kind of agile.
I wish they flew more. Yeah,
but it was still pretty cool.
They did a little bit with Cornbread, like you saw with Cornbread. You saw the lights of their eyes kind of in the air, but it hard cuts to Perline out when they're floating. Hard cuts to Perline singing with the foot stomping, hard cutting with them like beating up that guy who brought a switchblade.
Yeah.
It's brilliant editing, but also that's
cutting back and forth to their stomping with the rhythm and then stomping out the dude.
When I watch shit like that, I'm like, this is why you make movies.
I know.
It's a feeling you get, but yeah, I mean, like, I want, before I go on and ramble, I want to hear your stuff. When this movie starts kicking in and Mary comes in and she's like really putting it on Stack, they're sharing drool, it's going there. How are you feeling when the movie fully kicks into gear?
I was surprised how quickly. I mean, I knew in the advertising stuff, Hailee Steinfeld was going to be a vampire, so I was already. I was suspicious of whether or not she was a vampire the whole time, or if she just gets turned or something like that.
Yeah.
But after I realized that she gets turned, and I'm like, oh shit, this is when it's gonna kick in. They're gonna let her in or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that Stack would get turned that quickly.
Same.
But I was mostly picking up on like, what it meant, because the first half of the movie did so much table setting of like the world that it wanted to create and like what it wanted to tell you about, like we've been talking about, like, the cultural history with music. And so I was like, oh, okay, so the vampires are something else. It's not just a vampire movie, but the vampires represent, like I've been saying, the greater society, as I like to say, And so it was interesting though, because once they realized, like, oh yeah, because Stack's the character that wanted to let the Irish people in. He was the one that was super down, like, let's just bring everyone in, and we should, like, let everyone everyone should be welcome into this community.
Yeah,
like, that's the point of it.
Yeah,
and then this movie is basically like a counter argument against it of like, okay, but these people will be part of it too, and they're going to take it from you.
It's that line that I loved where Stack is trying to, as vampire, explain that to Smoke. And they eventually close the door on him, and Stack is just like, no vision. The Irish folk dance is just a brilliant scene. Like, it's again, the movie does a good job of making a fair point with the vampires. Like, you actually, as an audience member, kind of consider it. You're like, that's not a bad shtick, because it's kind of making a point of this whole world is filled with evil. How else are we ever going to feel free?
They use the whole, the appeal is like, this is all love, like almost like they're a bunch of hippies or something like that. They make it seem like they're just, we're all here, we're all going to share, we're all going to unify under this. They're all going to make music together and kind of fuse, and they're not like, going to fight each other or whatever, any of that stuff.
And they believe that. I don't think they're lying. They actually think that, though.
100%. And I don't want to jump ahead, but the post-credit scene though, they really bring it home though, where they bring in the value of life and death, of like what for a vampire, what the sun would mean to a vampire is very different to what the sun would mean to people like you and me, who are normal mortal people,
Oh yeah, I know.
And so that's the interesting part though, going back to, like you said, it makes an interesting case, but then by the end it finally brings it home that like it's not worth it.
I saw this movie in IMAX, and certain sequences that looked fucking amazing in IMAX is the opening scene where you see Preacher Boy drenched in blood going into that church with a broken guitar. That's in full IMAX, so you just saw that, and you're immediately, it's this beautiful shot of the plantation. It looks amazing.
Yeah, dude, this movie is so beautiful overall. I know we didn't touch on it a whole lot, but I just wanted to say that, like, so many shots, dude, are like, I'm just watching and I'm like, oh my god, this is fucking stunning.
You want to get okay? So cinematography is done by Autumn Durald Arkapaw. She is, I think, the first female cinematographer that's worked with IMAX.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it was like a part of the kind of promotional run that they were talking about this. It's shot on film. Obviously, like, Ryan Coogler consulted Nolan when it comes to shooting, not just on IMAX, but shooting film on IMAX. Because imagine shooting film is already just a pain in the ass. Like, David Cronenberg has recently been promoting his new movie. He's gone strictly to digital, and he says that, no, why would I go back to film? It's a pain in the ass to work with. David Lynch was like, no, film is a dinosaur. I'm not working there again. So it's like a pain in the ass, but film in IMAX, I can't even imagine. And something that Nolan said to Ryan Coogler as advice was like, don't bow down to the camera. Don't treat the IMAX camera like we can only shoot special scenes, you know? You can see that with this movie, where that opening scene is in IMAX, is not a big action set piece, but it's still fully immersive. I know you didn't see it in IMAX, so that's why I'm just kind of talking about it. But that conversation aside, I wanted to ask you, like, any special shouties you want to give before we get towards the final act of this movie? Any special shouties you want to give to your favorite shots in this movie?
I think kind of a lot of the stuff in the beginning was my favorite. You know, is when they're just driving down the road and you see like all the the cotton fields, or you see the clouds behind them. That's the stuff that sticks out the most to me. I mean, obviously that oneer is it'd be a sin to not give that a shouty. That oneer going through the barn. But a lot of my favorite stuff was just like the general atmosphere, like when Smoke goes into the town when he's going to go to that general store. You know, the world just looks so lived in. It was just
that
so
reminded
well
me
done.
A lot of Killers of the Flower Moon. When Leo arrives in the town and you suddenly see like, oh, they built this town. They like have extras here and they like did that. My favorite shot in the movie, there's obviously like the barn burner scene, the oneer, right? That's just a given. My favorite shot in the movie that the second time actually kind of got me choked up, because knowing where the movie's going to go, is hearing Preacher Boy play for the first time. And he's in the car with Stack, and Stack is like, all right, we'll play a little something. And then Preacher Boy just starts singing. Yeah. And it cuts to that shot of, this is honestly, I keep saying this, but this is why I love movies. It cuts to that shot of Stack just being like, whoa, and just, and just like, we're going to make some money. I put on my Letterboxd review, that shot is the closest we've gotten to Sam Neill taking off his glasses in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, in terms of like iconic like looks.
Reaction shots, like something reacting to something that's like otherworldly that you haven't seen before. But what's amazing is that it's a person playing music. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what art can do. It can move you to that level. And obviously he makes the joke of like, yeah, we're going to make some money. But it's also Stack. You can see it's just like it fucking floored him. Like, and that's something only a movie star can sell. Michael B. Jordan having that look. Obviously, Miles Caton, who gives an amazing performance in this movie and has an amazing voice. But Michael B. Jordan, that look is just like, you can't buy that. You know what I mean? Dude. That's just art. That's just talent right there.
You know what's funny about this is like, and this is to me, it's a testament of how strong this movie is. But we haven't talked a lot about the vampire, like the really crazy third act stuff. But yeah, I'm making the observation that like, you know, like we're just as invested in the characters, which is really cool, because normally with these types of genre pieces, we look at it like, you know, like, oh, remember that blood gore shot when they did this and that. But we're looking at it like, no, remember that character, the way this movie made you feel.
Yeah, it's honestly, they're obviously Cornbread has a great like special effects shot with his like
Oh, when his
makeup.
face gets blown apart.
There's not a lot of that. It's not a big like creature feature movie, you know. It's not a big like even an action movie. Now, if we want to start talking about the vampire stuff, so and this shot in IMAX, they like blew they actually made it clear, like when Grace Chow, like she knows her husband's out there, she starts getting mad and she starts lighting up that bottle, and then she's just like, "Come in, you motherfuckers." And it cuts to the shot of Jack O'Connell just being like,
Yeah, he's like, "Ooh boy."
when the doors open, the IMAX screen blew up. Like they like blew it the fuck up.
Oh, really? That's cool.
It was very exciting. And that was really fun. But the moment that I really want to talk about is the scene where they're making, Annie's being like, "Everyone take a piece of this garlic and eat it."
Yeah.
That Ryan Coogler mentioned throughout many interviews that a huge influence on this movie was The Thing.
That's exactly where my mind went when I saw it too, when they were trying, and which is cool. It's cool that they did that because they were actually, obviously it's a great homage to The Thing, but it also does make sense. They would be smart to narrow down who's who and who's okay. I think like that whole sequence of the movie when they're trapped in the barn definitely reminded me of The Thing. It had that kind of, like, it was shorter, obviously, so, but it still had that kind of claustrophobic feel to it.
Yeah.
It also reminded me of Night of the Living Dead a little bit.
Well, I mean, there's that one shot that feels like a direct homage where it just feels like they're all closing in on the barn outside. It feels like a straight from a George Romero movie. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of that going on. Once the vampire stuff kicks in, it just has a whole new context because of how moving that first half of the movie was. But the second half is kind of just like in a loving way, it becomes a B movie very quickly.
I mean, but that's what I love is the fact that like it's a B movie that is made by an auteur. Like it looks fucking amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
So people start getting fucked up, man. Perlene gets fucked up. We get that final interaction between the twins that
Yeah.
At first you think you don't really put together, or maybe if you're a better movie watcher than I am, you can tell that Stack didn't die. But they have that final confrontation. But the most like visually like impressive sequence to me is that moment when they're in the lake and Jack O'Connell's coming after him with that piece of guitar in his head. And really like go and with the moon in the back that they cut to very quickly in the opening of the movie. But I mean, that's just like that's perfect B movie metaphor. Whereas like literally a piece of the guitar is in the vampire.
Oh yeah. Well, even just in that opening, I knew like what this movie had to say just without saying anything when you see that broken guitar,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, during that sequence when they're in the water, yeah, it becomes like full 80s, like almost reminded me of that. This is like a weird comparison, but reminded me of like the Thriller video or something like that, like in the beginning of the Thriller video.
Oh yeah. Well,
where it goes full.
The synthy,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the synthy vibe is very John Carpenter as well, too,
Oh, totally John Carpenter, yeah. But I think like I knew obviously that he was going to live because of the opening, setting it up. So I was more fascinated, like, oh, fuck, how's he even going to get out of this? He's literally about to turn. And so then my brain put together, like, oh, smoke's coming, isn't he?
And that reveal feels like that. It's the shit I want in movies all the time is that reveal. You know what I mean? When he comes in and the audience just like went crazy over it. You know that thing when you watch a trailer for the movie a lot, you end up kind of doing a checklist in your head?
Oh, that moment was in the trailer. Oh, that moment was in the trailer.
More so like, they haven't done this moment that was in the trailer yet.
Got it. Okay, yeah, certain things that you're waiting for. Was it the part where they're like looking at the burning barn and they're all like scared of it?
No, it was the part that I was waiting for. I was like, when's that shot that we've seen in every trailer with Michael B. Jordan with that fat ass gun?
With the Tommy gun. Yeah, okay, yeah, same. That's the one.
So Preacher Boy gets to go, and well, first you realize that like Stack lied to Preacher Boy about whose guitar it was. He's like, "Man, son of a bitch, that was our daddy's." And then he takes out the trunk that has the Tommy gun. It's just, this is when Michael B. Jordan is like, this is where he comes alive. So right before he opens the trunk, he's trying to roll up a cigarette, but his hands has a tremor on it.
Yeah.
And then it does that hard cut of Smoke and Stack sharing a cigarette. And it's just like, and Michael B. Jordan has to sell that with his face, and he does it so well. Where it's just like,
I know.
I almost wish they didn't cut to that shot of Smoke and Stack sharing a cigarette, because I feel like the audience would have gotten it, what they were going for when his hands was shaking. You know what I mean?
I get that. Yeah. I think like I didn't mind it so much. I think like the movie, like when it goes full B movie, I'm like, okay, this movie's showing us everything. Like I'm okay with it at this point. You know, it's like a little on the nose, but I forgive it.
That part just felt like a studio note. I could see so clearly someone at Warner Brothers be like, "Well, we should see the shot of Smoke and Stack sharing the cigarette. Let's like cut back to it so the audience remembers."
I can see that. Yeah.
Whereas that kind of moment could have benefited when you watch it a second time and you're like, "Oh, he's crying because he's remembering his brother and how they shared a cigarette." Yeah. Anyways, still effective. It's a nitpicky thing. The Klan shows up, and then that's when my brain clicked. I'm like, oh, he's going to fuck up the Klan.
And he just machine guns them all to death.
The grenade, him clipping with the teeth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And chucking it inside of the car, and the whole car explodes. That part was basically just like, almost felt like Tarantino-ish, where it had this kind of blood for blood kind of thing, you know, of like just getting revenge.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, it's the super emotional moment where like Smoke's on the ground, gun pointed at the last Klan member, and then he sees Annie. Mm-hmm. And you think it's going to be a moment where he's going to die, or maybe that guy's just going to bleed out, or he's going to die before he gets to kill him. But he's happy with that because he gets to hold the baby when he dies or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And it's his fantasy. And he holds the baby. And Annie has that brilliant line. She was like, "If you stop smoking that, you can let him hold him. Yeah. I don't want any smoke to get on him." And it's just like a double meaning. And it's just like he's let go of that character that he plays of the smoke criminal mastermind, and now he's just that boy, you know, that he was when he met Annie.
Well, yeah, and it's capped off nicely when the Klansman, when he's dying, when he offers him money to spare him. And Smoke said earlier in the movie that money is all power, or how I forget how he phrases it, but he basically says like money is all like the ultimate source of power, like you need it. And then at the very end, he rejects it and machine guns him to death.
That was such a great moment too. He's like, "No, I'm fucking killing you. Like you're dead."
Yeah.
But that was another thing about freedom, right? Like you think Stack says it to him. He's like, "We were never going to be free. Like even with all this money, with this juke joint, we were never going to be free." Yeah, it's sad. That is the sad underlying truth behind it. But the optimistic ending of this movie is Preacher Boys. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was say I think Preacher Boy was essentially like you said, he's the main character that was caught in the middle of kind of the two ideologies between Smoke and Stack in terms of what they need to do to survive in this world. And so he ended up seemingly finding like a happy middle. You know, he experienced what he experienced, and he just became, you know, a normal man that just performed on his own terms, you know, and didn't lose himself in the process of it.
He doesn't let go of that guitar. And hard cuts to the 90s, and he's just like, "Oh shit!" He's like.
He's an old man playing.
Oh man, I can't tell you how fucking awesome it was though to see like Michael B. Jordan, Hailee Steinfeld dressed as 90s vampires.
I know that big sweater that he had.
That fucking
his haircut.
That ring that just said Stack on it is like,
dude, that was so cool.
That felt like I was watching a Spike Lee movie. Suddenly, I was like, "Oh shit!"
That must have been a Do the Right Thing nod. 100%.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt.
The love and hate, that part, dude. Do the Right Thing that movie just gets me so excited when I think about it. How good that movie is.
Yeah, that is one of those movies where you kind of stop whenever you talk about it. You're just like, "Oh my god."
I know, it just hits you. But
it's a brilliant movie. Okay, before we wrap things up, is there anything you want to talk about that post-credits movie? I feel like we addressed the themes pretty properly, but if you do want to say anything about the end credits.
Well, I touched on it earlier, you know, with the way it answered that question when it comes to the appeal of turning into a vampire. And which, I mean, I think we all thought for a second, like when, Michael B. Jordan and Hailee Steinfeld show up, like, "Oh fuck, are they going to eat him now? Or what are they like? Are they getting revenge?" Or you're wondering what's going to happen. And then you find out the truth that like, no, I made a promise that I'd, that I spare your life and let you live out your days. But if you want to turn, you could still do it if you want. You lived your life and you're coming close. And he's like, nah, I think I've seen enough, or whatever he says,
Yeah,
And
it's like the Captain America is like, no, I don't think I will.
yeah. But I love that dialogue exchange though, when he says like, I still have, I still wake up. I forgot how he's still traumatized by
Well,
everything that happened.
he was basically saying that I still think about that day, and
Yeah.
I remember that before all of that stuff happened,
Before the sun went down, it was one of the best days of my life.
yes, it was the best day of my life. Was it the same for you? And he was like, most definitely. It was the last time I saw the sun. It was the last time I saw my brother.
Yeah. And so I think that was a brilliant way to kind of wrap it up, though, of what the movie was trying to say about our relationship with our community and music and the culture behind it.
All right, my battery's about to die, so let's wrap this up. Chris, I'm glad you've watched Sinners. I'm glad we both enjoyed it. What a gift of a movie this is.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. And if you're on our Patreon or are thinking about joining, we're about to record the first episode of Movies That Played Us Where I Guess the Beard. So join us over there.
Hell yeah, it's going to be a blast.
Stay nice, dudes.